together yesterday. Mike and John.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Steve Shanker, City Manager. I want to welcome you to our annual town budget meeting. One of the responsibilities I have as a city manager is to prepare an operating budget, a financial and service-oriented budget, and as well as a capital improvements plan, a 5-year capital improvement plan for the city council, mayor and city council to review and approve. They can add things to our recommendation, subtract items out of it. But what we have tonight, actually, the town budget meeting represents the beginning of our budget process. The city staff will begin today getting some information from you, and we also have information from our citizen satisfaction survey, which you probably have read, or Susan Guiazza's probably, you heard that about that report last council meeting. Also, the mayor and council are out every day out and about with citizens getting input. So they're going to take all that information and hopefully they'll end up, we'll give you actually a time frame. At the end of February, the council will make final decisions. So the important part for you all to understand is we're at the beginning of the process. We don't have any answers yet. We're going to try to get input from you. Now, I've got to warn you, people are going to ask the council to do a lot of things, and I can't guarantee everything you say tonight will be incorporated in the budget. But they usually take a lot of that information when they see common themes, common desires, they try to incorporate it in the budget as much as possible. So we appreciate you coming tonight. We hope you'll take the time to offer some opinions about the budget. For people who aren't watching, and there are many of them out there, there's literally thousands out there today, equal to the World Series, I think, our audience. But we can call it a 239-5214. And if you have a question or want to comment, we'll make sure it's recorded. All the information we gather tonight will be passed on to the city council. I can promise you that. And for people who couldn't make it tonight, since we're at the beginning of the process, which doesn't end until February, there's plenty of time also to email to the city council your ideas for the budget or capital improvements plan. So you can email your thoughts to mayorcouncil@cityofames.org, and they'll be flashed across the screen for those who are in the audience at home. Okay? I want to start out giving you a little bit of information, not only to the people here, but many people who are watching at home. Some information about the budget. So we have our finance director, Corey Goodnow, and Nancy Masteller, who is our budget manager, we're going to give a little bit of information about the budget. And then the most important part of the evening is get your input too. So if you're all here, we hope you'll offer a comment or two. But let's start with a little overview for our residents about our budget.
Great. Thanks, Steve. Get this going. So the first couple slides are kind of about the timeline that Steve had already mentioned. So again, April, the citizen satisfaction survey sent to about 1,300 residents and 1,000 students. We just reviewed, Susan put on a presentation with City Council to review the results of that. And then in September, departments start preparing their CIP information, including their amended 25-26 budget, which is in the year that we're currently in, and their proposed, so upcoming fiscal year budgets as well. Tonight, November 6th, is our town budget meeting. So again, receiving input from the public on service levels and projects. In November and December, budget meetings take place with departments in the city manager's office. This is an intensive line by line item review of operating budgets, and then a planning session with multiple of the departments to discuss their capital improvement requests. And then in December, on December 9th, actually, the city council budget issues meeting is held to review issues, priorities, and service levels. And then in January, the city manager will hold budget reviews with departments. We'll have a CIP workshop on January 20th, where the departments will present their individual CIP requests, and they'll receive public feedback on January 27th. In January and February, the City Council will review the entire budget with the departments in 5 meetings. On January 30th, we'll have kind of a budget overview meeting where we'll talk about property taxes quite a bit. And then on the 3rd, 4th, and 5th, the departments will present their individual budgets, with the culmination on the 10th, where we'll receive feedback from the City Council. We'll receive public feedback and talk about how we proceed with the budget. Several years ago, there was a new process instituted in March where the county auditor sends out individual property tax statements. Those will go out in March again this year. And then on April 14th is our goal to adopt the final budget. So we'll go through the statutory requirements, we'll hold our public hearings, and then hopefully we complete the entire process on April 14th. And then again, the satisfaction survey starts again. So the whole process is a little bit cyclical there. A little bit of information on property taxes for the next few slides. You can see this is our 25-26 property tax rate comparison. Within the city limits, there's primarily two different school districts, the Ames School District and the Gilbert School District. 89% of the residential dwellings are located in the Ames School District. The remaining 11% are in the Gilbert School District. You can see on the slide here, looking at the Ames School District first, about 46% of the consolidated tax rate is the Ames School District tax rate at about $14. 2% is about the percentage of the property tax rate that DMAC makes up. The county makes up about 18% at about $5.43, and then we make up about 34% in that taxing district with a tax rate of $10.30. Similar calculations in the Gilbert School District. They just have a slightly higher school district tax rate, which adjusts the percentages. So really the slides are very similar. The only thing you can see is the Gilbert School District's at 52%, which lowers the percentage of the remaining taxing entities. So sometimes we get the questions, how do we come up with our property tax rate? And so this is a kind of a little bit of an overwhelming slide to get to that point, but really we start with what does the city need to balance our budget, our general fund primarily? And so we look at our total requirements. So last year, the total requirements for property taxes were just over $31 million. And that amounts to about an $8.52 tax rate per $1,000 of taxable valuation. The state does provide a little bit of a replacement tax. You may recall that there were some changes to commercial property taxation a few years ago where the first $150,000 of commercial valuation is taxed at the residential rate, and then they backfill that for us. So a little bit comes back to us from that calculation, and then we use the local option sales tax to subsidize our property taxes. So if you're doing the math here, the general fund levy required $31.1 million. Well, we subtract out the state replacement tax, we subtract out the local option sales tax, and we get to a total net general fund levy requirement of $23.3 million. And what that amounts to is a tax rate of about $6.39 almost. We do the same thing for our transit system, SIRIDE. So the request from SIRIDE for property taxes was just over $2.2 million. They also receive a portion of the state replacement tax, about $37,000. And so the total impact on property taxes was a collection of about $2.2 million or about 60 cents per $1,000 of taxable valuation. And then we also collect taxes to pay for our debt service. So in the current fiscal year, we expect to pay about $13 million in debt service. That's principal, interest, and other fees. We have some fund balance, some savings that we've allotted to use from past years of about $600,000. And then we also get an allotment of state replacement tax for that levy as well. So you can see we started with about 13 million, and now we're down to about 12.2, and that amounts to about $3.32 of taxes, or tax rate of $3.32 per $1,000 of taxable valuation, for a grand total of about $37.7 million in total taxes with a rate of about $10.30. So that's how we kind of go about coming up with those things. What this slide shows, attempts to demonstrate, is the impact of local option sales tax. So the dotted line across the top is the total tax rate without any of the subsidies, the state replacement tax, and the local option sales tax. And the yellow is the impact of local option sales tax. So without the local option sales tax, we would expect it to collect $12.33. But we subtract out $2.03. That's that subsidy from local option sales tax in the last slide. And then again, we get to that $10.30, which should be a pretty familiar number. So for comparison purposes, we show year over year valuation and taxes for a property assessed at $100,000. We know that no property typically remains at $100,000, and there's increased valuation, and that affects the calculation. But we're just trying to demonstrate the impact of a few things here. So again, the top line is assessed value of $100,000. We roll it back by the residential rollback. That's that second row of numbers. You can see in 25-26, it was about 47.43%. And then it comes up with your taxable value. In 25-26, you can see that's about $47,000. And then we divide that by 1,000, multiply it by our tax rate. Again, this is just the city's tax rate. And we come up with a total collected tax for the city for a $100,000 home of $489. And so again, that same formula can be applied year over year, going back on this slide back to 2023. So remember that $489, we take that and we allocate that by the use or the department or program or function that uses those funds. So you can see in 25, 26, looking at the top line, streets and traffic, of that $489, $123 was used for street and traffic, $108 was used for police protection, 64 for fire protection, so on and so forth. You can see all the way down to the bottom where we're looking at the airport, that's $1, those type of things. So again, just a way for us to compare kind of the cost of services that residents are paying on an annual basis, and then we also break it down on a monthly basis in the next column to the right there. We do survey every year cities over 40,000 to see how we compare. I think that's a pretty good way for us to kind of, I guess, evaluate our efficiency. You can see that this chart includes population. This is the general fund levy. So this doesn't include our transit levy or our debt service levy. There's other levies that other cities utilize. And then this is the total levy. So this is the property tax rate, cities' property taxes rates, total and consolidated. So other cities use different forms of, again, property tax rates, but this is all of them together. And then we take that number, we multiply that by our valuation, and we come up with a total taxable collection. And what we do, one way to measure efficiency is to divide that by population. And so you can see here, City of Ames population is just over 66,000 people. There's our levy rate. And so we're at per capita $568 essentially. Again, there's a lot of different ways that governments measure efficiency. This is one way to do it. The way that we've chosen to do it on this slide. Probably of note, all of the cities with the asterisk to the right collect local option sales tax. Ankeny is the only one that doesn't. And then also maybe notable is Dubuque has a casino, and they receive about $6 million in casino revenue that reduces their property tax burden. So just another way that kind of they're offsetting that burden. You can kind of see that on their per capita calculation. So where does the money come from? We talked a lot about property taxes, but really the primary source of revenue for the city comes for charges for services. So that's our electric utility, our water, our sewer, our resource recovery plant. So that makes about $109 million, or about 36% of our total revenues for the year. We also receive intergovernmental revenues. That would be road use tax, federal, state grants, those type of revenues. Those make up about 16%. We borrow, so bond proceeds represent not just our general fund borrowing, which we use for primarily street projects. It also includes some of the utility borrowing. We're in the midst of a water pollution control facility upgrade, $65 million worth of project. A portion of that project is included in that. Then, of course, we have property taxes. That's just a smidge higher than on the last slide. That's because we have some TIF collection and mobile home taxes and a few other things. So, but pretty close. And then we have some internal service revenue, other taxes, use of money and property, and that's pretty much interest we receive on our fund balances, and maybe some rental revenue we receive for property, and then just kind of some smaller things that follow. So the question is, how are we spending that revenue? 32% of the revenue goes towards capital improvement projects. That's fairly consistent. That's going to continue to grow as we undertake major improvements to our electric utility, as we construct improvements to the animal shelter, as we finish, hopefully, the water pollution control facility. So we're going to see that number continue to grow. And then again, we have costs for running our utilities. That's electric, water, and sewer, stormwater, those type of things. We pay about 8.6% of our expenses towards transportation. So that would be our SIRIDE contributions, that would be our street network, that type of thing. And then we have internal services, public safety, obviously that's police and fire, animal control, building inspections, that type of thing. We have some debt service, culture and recreation, that would primarily be parks and recreation, the library. Community development is largely our planning department. And then we just have general governmental services. This final slide. As part of the survey that we conduct, one of the questions is the preferred property tax adjustment for the upcoming year. So the 2025 is the most recent survey. You can see, I think the most noticeable thing is for 25, 4%, an additional 4% of people suggested that the property tax rate should decrease. Interestingly, 4% of the people recommended that the property tax increase. So, kind of combine all those numbers, about 8% less than the previous year recommended recommended no change. So, just kind of interesting trends. It feels like it fluctuates, but you can kind of see there's definitely kind of a trend in both ends of that graph. I think that's all we have, Steve.
Yeah, there are a few items that I think might be confusing regarding property taxes that I want to talk about. First of all, when you get your property tax bill, what we're talking about tonight and we'll be talking with the city council is just the city portion of your property taxes. Your property tax bill is actually made up of a number of other entities' budgets too. The county, the school district, the city, and then a variety of others. There's Story County Hospital you pay some taxes for. DMAC, got a great junior college system here, you pay taxes for too. So it usually breaks down in the state of Iowa. If you have a property tax bill of, let's say, $6,000, about 1/3 of it goes to the city government. Anywhere from 48 to 50, over 50% goes to the school district. And the remaining will go to the remaining percentage goes to the county and those other entities, the junior college system. So that's confusing sometimes because they'll be watching the city council meeting. The city council will say, our budget is going to be flat, no increase, or it's only going up 1 or 2%. And people might get their bill, their overall property tax bill, and it goes up higher than that. And that might be because the school district added a new high school and their budget went up a little higher, voted on and approved, but it goes up higher. So it gets very confusing to people in that regard. Also, what's sometimes confusing is because you can live in different school districts, it's possible. I live north of Bloomington Road, right? That is in the Gilbert School District. People who live south of Bloomington are in the Ames School District. I could have a friend who lives south of Bloomington who has a house assessed at $600,000. And I can be north of Bloomington, have a house assessed at $600,000. And we will have different bills, property tax bill. And the difference is the school district portion, right? Right now, I think Gilbert School District might be about 52% of your property taxes. Ames schools are about 48%. So that's confusing sometimes. You'll all live in the city of Ames, but it's because you're living in different school districts that causes that. Everybody understand that? Anybody else have any questions about taxes? Again, we're talking about tonight a fiscal year that begins July 1st of 2026, goes to June 30th of 27. And a CIP, a 5-year CIP, we try to program those big capital improvement projects. We'll start that July 1st of 26, 27 and go to June 30th of 30, 31. Is that where we're at? 5 years. 5 years, that's what we're looking for. We have to program them. For the CIP, what we try to do, there's an art form to that, and it also has to do with our utility fees too. People don't like to usually see fees go up 10% in electric and drop down and be flat, right? And they like the property taxes to go like that. So what we try to do is we try to level these. We try to put these all in a level. It's going to be a slight increase, maybe in utility fees or property taxes each year, rather than going up and down and up and down. So there's an art form to that. So therefore, we get a lot of information, a lot of requests. We can't do them all in the first year because it would go whoop and then it'll be flat there, right? So there's an art to doing that, to try to mitigate the impact on our utility customers, their rates, and also their property taxes. Any questions about anything we have here? Also, yes, Mr. Winkleblack, I know you'll have a good question for me.
What's our total annual budget for just our operating, not the CIP, but what's our total, the city of Ames, what's our total budget? How much money? I know you talked about property tax and the other stuff.
All funds, including utilities.
How much money does the city of Ames bring in and what's our, just for operations, not CIP?
Bring in or charge? Charge, I mean, the
I
expenditure.
assume, hopefully they're close to
expenditure.
the same.
Well,
Not for the
not necessarily.
utilities,
I'll tell you
probably.
why. If we're doing a big capital improvement, let's say we're going to do an $80 million electric fund project, okay? Sometimes we raise rates and we collect rates over time. Okay, we collect them a lot of money over time of 5 years that at the end I'll have enough money to pay for it. You know what I mean? And sometimes you deficit finance, you dip into your fund balance. As you raise your rates, you'll fill that up. So sometimes you use your balance to fill it up, okay? So revenues don't always equal expenditures in the utilities. Okay, so operations, that's all funds.
Yep, operations, all funds, 163,000,009,633. That's the 25-26 budget we're in right now.
Yeah, they don't, oh,
CIP, what's the CIP?
Then CIP is another, a little over 98 million. Debt services, 21.3 million, and then we have internal services of 24 million.
but we could have a big nutrient reduction, Tim's favorite project, nutrient reduction project. That's a big bump, 50 million. It might not be here in the next capital improvement. Hopefully it's not going to be there. That allows us to fill in other projects. Say if we're doing it, could be in the third year, we have an opening to fill in other projects. So again, we don't go like that. Other thing I want to point out, if you ever, you're accountant, we do fund accounting. Each one of these utilities are enterprise funds. They're treated as separate businesses. So you could look at some of these funds and say, wait a minute, you've got $5 million left in the electric fund. Why don't you take that money and move it over and build roads with it? We don't do that. We have a fiduciary relationship to the customers of the electric utility, that the money that goes with the electric utility stays there, and we use it for those improvements. We don't swap the money around. So if you think about it, we got water, sewer, electric, stormwater utility. We have a resource recovery. All those are treated as separate businesses. Okay?
Steve, do other communities do the same thing
In what sense?
in keeping those as separate businesses, so to speak?
I think so. If they're enterprise funds, the good ones do. How about that? No, most cities do. Most of the city managers I know handle it that way. They handle it as separate operations. That's right. You've collected from the electric utility customers, that revenue should go back and benefit the electric utility. If you're going to use it for a water utility project, you should raise the rates in the water utility. Not all the people who are customers of the electric utility, you live in Ames and also have a different, mayor will tell you, you can live in the city of Ames and have a different electric utility serving you than the city of Ames. You see what I mean? So that's why you be careful. The revenue you collect goes back to that utility.
Maybe just talk about too, how when you're looking at long-term rates, I mean, like water rates, sewer rates, what you're trying to accomplish, like you're saying, you're trying to collect money. We have like a $66 million project at the wastewater treatment plant, for sake of discussion. There's a long.
We can look really good. We can have no increases for 5 years, and all of a sudden we need a 30% increase. But we look ahead and say, we got an $80 million project. He will tell me what the principal and interest on the bonds are going to have to be when we borrow money. So we will have small increases as we ratchet up there to raise the money to pay for the long range, for the bigger projects. So we're cognizant of the impact that those utility fees will have on the customer. You pay property taxes, but you pay a lot for all those utility fees too. So we want to soften the blow. So the council would like to see a series of smaller increases than give zero increase and go boom, 20% increase at one time. So they've asked us to do that, and we've tried to do that as much as possible. Good question.
Can you describe some of the factors that positively and negatively impact the property tax revenue?
The revenue or the expenditure?
So can you explain some of the factors that positively or negatively affect the?
Well, one of the negative things is, and I'm not being critical, but the state legislature is putting clamps on us on what we can collect as far as property taxes. So no matter how much we grow, they kind of take it away from us. And that hurts us, right? Because just like your business, our expenditures go up. And it's hard to keep the same level of service, plus add something new, a new swimming pool or a new fire station, and cover all of our costs there if we're capped. The general levy right now has a bit of a cap on it by the state. And this General Assembly coming up, they're talking about putting more caps on us, which will make it even more difficult for us. So that's one thing we're cognizant of all the time. Revenues, what's your other part of your question?
So you mentioned the things that are negative. How about positive? Of what types of growth? Is it residential growth? Is it industrial growth, commercial growth that positively affects the?
Well, every year we look at growth. So growth's very important. Growth generates new revenue. But you have to balance that because we want to make sure it gets on our books. Sometimes we give incentives away. That's a 20-year incentive, and we don't start collecting that benefit for 20 years. That's why when we try to give our incentives, we try to get them as quickly as possible so we could get the company to come here, but we could get on the tax rolls as quick as possible too. So there has to be a balance there, right? And that's what we look to do. We try to balance that.
As Ames looks to grow, what are is it residential development? Is it commercial development? Is it industrial
Oh,
development?
I think it's all of it. You got to have all of it in place, right? You could say you want industrial, you're not going to do it. It's not going to be beneficial if you don't have residents to follow, right? You need commercial because people like to shop and they want to live. Those are those other quality of life factors. So to grow, I think you have to have them all there, right? And that's a balance too, because then you say, well, then I want you to do 50 million here, 50 million here, 50 million here. And I tell you, that's a 10% increase in your taxes. And you say, no one wants to live in Ames. The taxes are too high. It's all a balancing act. That's what it's not as easy as it looks. But to answer your question, I think we need all growth in all those areas, not just one. My personal opinion, to be successful.
Yeah, I think, from a finance director perspective, we want commercial industrial, right? Because there's no rollback. So we get 90% of the valuation. So you can see the rollback, we're 67-ish% residential in terms of valuation. The residential rollback is a big impact in terms of our taxable valuation. So we're a greater, Steve mentioned, a good mix is perfect. But if you had to pick one, right, it'd be commercial industrial.
But if you do industrial, we have industries here.
Yeah.
There's no place to live.
Yeah.
I'm not sure everyone wants to drive 45 miles to come up here. So that's why it's a balance. It may not be as finance. Actually, houses aren't because of the rollback. You don't generate as much taxes with the 47%. It's going to drop again, which is going to be difficult for us as we take more of that assessed value away. So I think if you want to have a good city, you got to have all of the balance of all those. But how do you do it all at once without impacting taxes? Because there's a point where people are going to say taxes are too much. I'm going to go live someplace else. Any other questions about that? Okay. Oh, I didn't mention Tim Garton's here, city council member. The mayor will be passing around the microphone. We want to get you on tape if we could. Pa Van Golbeck, she's assistant city manager. She is the scribe since I'm left-handed and can't write on a chart without getting marking all over me. You ever try to do that at chalkboard with your left-hander? So we'll go around. Everybody can we got to go one at a time, if that's okay, if you're here. Remember, whether it's a CIP or an operating budget, we need a dollar amount and maybe even a year if it's a CIP thing. Suggestion.
Thanks, Steve.
And also, I love this. Everybody wants more. Everyone wants to pay more and more taxes, don't we? What services, not just firing the city manager, but what services would be willing to do without? That we get cut, right? Or is it just going to be more and more and more, which probably will be, but you ought to think about that too. Okay? Sorry, Kim.
All right, no problem. Thank you, Steve. Kevin Burke, obviously with Discover Ames. I want to talk a little bit about the Ames Event Center that we've been talking about within the Link development. And we have a number of people here tonight supporting our initiative of this development. And there will be an ask. I don't have an ask tonight. But there will be an ask that will be coming relatively soon. But I think the ask is more of a collaboration that we're looking for of trying to solve how we can make this development happen. Not just the event center, but everything that needs to happen in and around it, from the parking ramp to the pedestrian bridge to wells that need to be moved, or well that needs to be moved, or relocated or eliminated, I guess. But all of there's a number of things that will be included in the ask that we're going to make. And we're here tonight just to let you know that this is an extremely transformative project for all of Ames and not just downtown. It obviously, this is the epicenter of Ames, is our downtown. And we feel that this transformative project will allow the community to have the growth that's needed to attract those businesses and industry, attract the talent that needs to, that Iowa State is seeking to get those residents to live here. That this is a project that is really a community project. So we will be making an ask relatively soon, but just want to really mention that we're just asking that when we do make this proposal to you with hopefully within a week or so, that we look at it more as a collaboration of how do we solve it and how do we work within the budget over time, whether it's CIP or within the annual budget, to make the entire project come to fruition and be successful.
Who's in support of it? You raise your hand if you're, you don't have to say the same thing. I just want to add to it.
Just to piggyback a little bit on what Kevin was saying, my name is Sam Stagg. I'm with Tenfold Architecture as well as Ames Area Alliance, and I'm also on the Main Street board for Ames. And the interesting piece about this particular project is that, yes, there are dollars associated with it, but there's also other things that will be asking or offering some potential for collaboration in terms of maybe even some ordinance revision or some changes in how we think about utilities and infrastructure, parking, and just access between downtown and the Link property. There's a great opportunity to connect both downtown and the exciting Ames guiding vision that was just performed along with the Link. There's a lot of common goals and aspirations for both projects. And so being able to combine those initiatives, I think, is a great opportunity for Ames, not just downtown and the Link, but also for the entire community, and not just the entire community, but the region that the Alliance represents. All of it works together. And so it's a cliche, but a rising tide raises all ships. We really believe that. And so the Link contributes to Main Street, which contributes to the Lincoln Way corridor, to Iowa State, and across the Alliance. So we're excited to be participating in that effort, and anxious for and excited for the collaboration with the city. Should we go down the line?
Also want to talk a little bit about, I know there's a couple of things that are going to be coming up in front of the council here, we believe in November, but some of the incentives that we've been working with city staff regarding the city playing a more important role in pioneer infrastructure and some of our subdivisions. One of the things that when we talk about Ankeny and other places where we lose a lot of people, to 20 miles south of here, it's because lack of options and opportunities here. So I know it's going to be on the council's agenda here in the next 30 days and hopefully even sooner than that. But I think those are really important things for us to look at as a community, because I think when some of the council folks went out and talked to some of our major employers, they made comments about, well, we go to Ankeny and we have 15 choices of things we can look at. We come to Ames and we have one or two. And it's really about supply and demand that drives some of those things. And I think we need to try to be more aspirational when we look at some of the other communities that have been more forward looking when it comes to pioneer infrastructure, because it is at some level, if you build it and they will come. The other thing that we want to talk about, or I want to talk about a little bit, is our industrial development land. We, was only, I think, 3 years ago when we started out the project out across from the animal disease lab. We started with 11 lots and we only have 1 lot left to sell. And that project took 2 years to get through the process. And now we're already back to a deficit position like we were before. And if it takes another 2 years, now is the time when we believe that the city council is going to have to make an effort to identify, and if it's running some utilities, a classic example of that in my own mind is We have the DOT put in a wonderful interchange out at the corner of US Highway 30 and Teller, and yet we have no public utilities out there. And as I understand it, none are even planned for out there. And we have people that are calling and going, hey, how do we develop this area? And it's like, well, it's really tough when we have no public utilities. So I guess I'd like for us to consider what our options are, how we can begin to figure out, and I know it's expensive, but we've got to try to find a way because it's the most available. There's land available. There's willing sellers out there. And just like we did the project on Bailey a couple of years ago, or on North Dayton, there isn't much place for us to go for industrial development. So all of those things, again, the infrastructure for our residential subdivisions, but then we also have industrial folks that want to come to our community. So you're right, it takes all of those things, but I think our city needs to take a hard look at our infrastructure things. And that's why we have Steve here to figure those things out. And Mr. Garten and the rest of the people that sit around the dais every other Tuesday night.
Anybody else?
I appreciate what Chuck said about the housing development, and I wanted to highlight the opportunity that we have for a variety of housing. The downtown guiding vision that the city participated with the Alliance identified that we need 1,000 more housing units downtown in addition to what we have now. The Link project will knock out a chunk of that, but it highlights the importance of infill and density housing. It's been mentioned the meetings that we had with our a few of our major industries, and each one of them mentioned the need for workforce housing. So the Pioneer infrastructure to support a variety of housing, the city council's flexibility in being able to evaluate codes and allow for things that unique types of housing in those areas. And then, as Chuck mentioned, the Pioneer infrastructure to support development of land that we have available.
Anybody got anything less? I think it's a fair question though, because you look at all these things, Chuck said I can work it out. Actually, the people who work it out are you all as taxpayers. I'm going to ask you an interesting question. You open up your you all look at your taxes. Remember, how much is that taxes to the city of Ames? How much is it? Good. If you got your tax bill and filled the city of Ames, taxes went up, what would be acceptable percentage? 2%, 4%, 6%, 8%, 10%, 12%? You get all these things, everything everybody wants, everything you want. You got to pay for it though. I just want to know, what is it acceptable? Because the council has to grapple with this. It's not that these are all gray. What is acceptable, do you think? Maybe to you, maybe you want to say, what do you think is acceptable to the community? Help the council understand this. 10%. 10%, double digit, okay. Anybody else? 10%, okay.
I think looking compared to other communities, so those slides were helpful. Thank you for showing those. And as we look to see where Ames stacks up, it looked like
Ames, I know historically through city council
Right.
and Steve, you and others
Right.
have made a point to keep those taxes low. And I think we're grateful for that. And when there are opportunities to do some great things in the community, I would suggest, hey, let's look at where the city of Ames falls in the grand scheme of things. And I think even if it was a 10% increase, I think we would still fall very much toward the lower end of that. And it just seems like there's some opportunities to do some really, really amazing things that, yes, there are expenses that go along with that. There are also returns to the community for that.
If I told you what if the state's legislature would do something to us that would prevent us from raising rates? Would you all be willing to help the council talk to the legislature and prevent that from happening? I mean, there's talk about not only freezing the general levy, which pays for police, fire, parks and recreation, library, those kind of things, and maybe some of the things you're asking for. But if they freeze the whole levy or limit it, let's say the debt service, some of this would be debt service, I think. We're in big trouble. We can't meet your needs, your desires. Even if you said raise it 15%, we're not gonna be able to do that. So you need to watch the legislature and see what they could do that might take that ability away from us. And hopefully you'll support the city council in trying to deny that from happening. Because most people, they want lower property taxes. Not like you. I commend you. You want 10%. I don't think we look at our statistically valid residential survey. It doesn't say that's the problem. That's the balance the council has. You usually find if it's something you want, it's great, right? If something you don't want, it's a waste of money and don't raise my taxes. I just wish you'd be put your position in the city council, how difficult a situation they're in, trying to balance all these things. And that's why if we can do these things and kind of level it out over time, and we've been talking to Chuck, not everything has to be done on the, let's say on the housing the first year, you know what I mean? It could be spread over time. I don't even know what year you're talking about having to make a commitment of what magnitude, but it's harder if it's one time.
So if
Because Tim likes me to financially plan. So we plan out long-term planning and try to soften the blow.
if the state limits those levies more significantly, what happens to those other cities that looked like maybe had rates that were dramatically higher than Ames now? What happens to those?
They all are starting to hurt.
But they drop proportionally to where they're currently rated.
No, it freezes going up. That's what I'm saying. To try to do new things or limit you. They won't freeze. Don't get me wrong. There'll be something. Let's say if they tell a growing city in somewhere south of us that you could go up 3%, not going to be good. Not be good for us. You know, we keep a very low tax asking. Most of the citizens won't say, hey, thanks, you got low taxes. If I talk to most citizens, they complain our taxes too high in Ames, okay? They don't see it in relative position. They don't care. They just care, what did you do to me last year? What did you do this year? And to hold things really tight, it takes about 4% for us. 4% for us. Just to keep pace, you know, we just like your businesses. If you looked at what our property insurance is going up, our labor costs, our insurance costs, we have the same thing, just to do that. Now, we told the public just recently, the fire station, remember the fire station, what they voted on? We told them, if you listen, I want to make sure they understood, we normally go up 4%, that fire station will be another 2%. So we're probably at 6% already. Oh yeah, and then the aquatic center is another thing. Aquatic centers do not break even. We could, but you wouldn't want to pay $10 an admission. So there's a subsidy there, which we've told people about too, from the very beginning. I'm not saying we can't do it all. I'm just saying, I want you to understand the pressure the city council's on. And usually we figure it out. It just takes time sometimes to let us fold things in. Now, we can move other projects back, right? The CIP, you could take projects that are there and the council could say, you know, I know it's going to be done next year. We're going to move that, kick it out. We're going to move it. That's the benefit of the 5-year plan, right? It's flexible. It's a plan. It's not a budget. So but that's priorities because you're now taking a project away from someone else they might have wanted, so they might have desired. So it's an interesting dilemma councils have all over the country because I think people want more, but they don't want to pay more. But we can figure it out. We can usually figure it out if we go slow and think about it.
Outside of building a casino like Dubuque, what are some other things that other cities are doing? Or have you had conversations with other city leadership and management and
Yeah, it's not good because
strategies and techniques?
even when you freeze taxes, it's going to come back. Someone's got to pay for it unless you're willing to cut library hours, fire stations, things like that. So people are turning to user fees, pet licenses, utility franchise fees. You know, people pay for that anyway. It's just in another source. You need money to operate. So there's no silver bullet. You either have to cut expenditures. If you're not going to use property tax, you got to find another source of revenue, which people pay for. Now, if you move it to a user fee, at least you can justify the person who's using it is paying for it. It's not being socialized among all taxpayers. But people won't like it.
Steve, can you explain just the relationship between or how impacts to the CIP, whether the total value of the CIP, if we said, hey, we want to spend for any of these projects, we want to spend another $2 million or $5 million, whatever the number is on the CIP, how that impacts our overall
Property taxes.
budget. How does that
It does.
roll into?
Do you have the levies?
I don't have it.
All right. one of the 4 levies we have is a debt service levy. So let's say we do general obligation bonds. That's different than revenue bonds for water, sewer, electric projects. That's utilities, right? So when we do a street or a fire station or something like that, or I don't know what else you want to come up with, that's a debt service. That's part of your bottom line, $10.30. So the more you spend on those projects, the more your property taxes are going to go up, right? And if they freeze that and say even if you wanted to, even if the city say, I want to give you a 10% increase in your taxes, a tax rate, or just the tax take, we won't be able to do that. And there's talk about eliminating TIF too, you know. I don't think that'll happen, but there's always been talk about that. But there's no easy way to do it in terms of raising additional revenue. It's going to come from someone paying for it. Can it be shift to user fees for those people who benefit? If you can isolate the benefit of it, you would charge. And there's other services like fire department. We all pay for fire department, but luckily I've never had anybody come to my house. But we got to pay for it to have it ready for everybody, right? So yeah, we check all the time, and people are moving to franchise fees, but that's going to be tacked onto your bills, your electric bill, your water bill, your sewer bill. Someone's going to pay for it.
One last thing for me. It seems like we did it when we went north of town and a little bit when we went east of town. When we talk about connection fees or those type of things, that seems to be the way some of our peer communities have done things. So how does that impact Ames? And wouldn't that be a tool for some of these things? I mean, to me, that's one of the things that I see as government's role is to do these, because it looks to me like on the surface that most of that money gets paid back to our city when we do the connection fees.
Yeah, the problem with connection fees, if it never develops, you never get it back. So some pieces of property never gets paid. Or what I'm finding now, we're working with a lot of housing developers right now asking for incentives. They're asking to waive the fees, so it never gets paid back if you do it. They're asking, you didn't, but people are asking that as an incentive. So you're right. You could also special assess. I don't know if you think special assessment helps you. The city fronts it, and then it's paid off as the developer develops and sells homes. You know, that's another way to do it. We're up fronting it at a lower, probably a lower cost. You could do things like that if that's helpful. Connection fees are probably the worst one, because on special assessment, you got to pay it. You know, I mean, you pay it. It's spread over 10 years or so. Connection fees, if you have, 50 acres, the last 20 doesn't develop for 20 years, you never get it back. But that's one. We got them. We have them. But I'm being asked now to ask the city council to waive them as an incentive. I don't blame them. I mean, people are asking for it. It's a cost. But that's, yeah, we do that. We have connection fees. We have connection fees on East Lincoln Way. That's our Prairie View Industrial Complex. We were partnering with Alliant. We were going to put those in, and we were going to have all sorts of development occur. And we're having some problems there, as you well know. And we've got that connection fee out there, sitting out there, and we can't get you in there, to do your project, which is a great project. So sometimes you have to sit on that connection fee, but that's one thing we do, and we try that. But now people are asking to waive it. Again, a balance.
Bonnie Alley with Discover Ames and a community member here in Ames. Budget is my least favorite word, just for the record, but
You do the budget for the organization?
no.
I thought you were the budget.
Absolutely not.
Sorry.
I know we're talking a lot about numbers and stuff, but it's not just about the numbers. It's also about a renewed sense of pride in what Ames can be. And I think thoughtful and forward-thinking budget decisions is investing in that momentum.
Sure. Agree with you.
Along those lines, I am wondering, this is more of a hypothetical question, or maybe a question for a housing developer to say, we've talked about the feedback that we've got from plant managers and things where they went to Ankeny because there was choice and not so much choice in Ames. I don't know that I've ever heard somebody say, oh, I'm not coming to I'd rather go to Ankeny because the property taxes are lower. They're choosing a place where there's choice and maybe even more importantly, a sense of place and a vibrancy and that property. So I'm wondering if it would be an interesting survey or study to evaluate what the citizens of Ames think about balancing some of these lifestyle things or development against property tax and kind of weigh them of,
Would they be willing to pay more property?
would you
tax?
be
got that?
willing to pay more if there were more restaurants or more housing or more vibrancy or whatever amenities, and kind of judging what that is to give a gauge. We've got a survey of, I don't know, 10 people here. I wonder if it would be more, seven. Oh, okay, gotcha. To evaluate what how the council or how the citizens would rank those values.
That'd be good. Yeah, tell them what you're gonna exactly get and what it costs, and let them tell us. Any other questions?
I think going back to you had a slide that showed we did ask a survey in terms of pay more, less, or the same. And we had, 600 some people respond. And council does look at the citizen satisfaction survey. So, and it was pointed out that what was interesting is 4% went up in terms of saying increase it, but then also 4% more this year said, decrease it. And I made the comment, a few weeks ago at an event at the Alliance. We will try and figure it out. But I just want you to share with you that when I go down to the State House, I get bombarded by all legislators saying, whenever we go door knocking, all we hear is our property taxes are too high, lower them.
Right.
And Governor Reynolds has said this year and her last year that she's on a mission essentially to reimagine, rethink, change property taxes. And so these are all fantastic. And I think that what we have to do is if we start doing some of these, and if we all of a sudden have our budget cap, which is probably the worst thing that could happen, if they say all of a sudden you can only go up 2%, then we got decisions to make. And that's going to mean cutting services. When it comes to debt service, 80% of people consistently say they want improvements to roads and traffic control. That has been consistent, I think, for decades. And so that means you're going to start saying we're going to pull out doing some of that to do some other things as well too. So it becomes a balancing act. So we're just saying we need to work together. We need help from every entity that has a voice down there at the State House. And we're not asking to have unlimited spending authority. We're just saying we think that our community is seeking to be responsive to our residents. And no, we're not saying, we don't have 80% saying lower our taxes. So we could make that point. We just passed the bond issue by 87% for the fire station. Story County passed a bond issue to do amenities, $25 million, a couple of years ago. So I do think that people want to invest in that, but what we're battling against is potentially a governor, using that different ways, an engine governor, all of a sudden saying, we're going to basically say, no, you can't go up, very much. So we're trying to balance all of that. Kevin, like it's been said, we want to work together, but unfortunately we got some pretty strong headwinds at the State House and they control that. So we're going to work through it, but it may mean we have to make some changes on what we do fund or how we think about taking on debt. So far, what is it, Corey? We talked about this afternoon. If we go up like 6%, then we get ratcheted down to 3%. That's our cap on growth. If the rollback goes down, which it sounds like it's going to go down, our revenues are going to go down, and we're going to have an aquatic center coming online that is talking about significant costs, for operational. That's going to happen. That's not been in the budget, previously too. So we got a balancing act. So we got to work together. But if we get a choke chain around us, it's going to be really, really difficult. So that's where, the Alliance with the state chamber organization, professional developers, home builders, all that kind of stuff, have to just say, don't don't essentially adversely affect what's really causing Iowa to continue, to grow from the manufacturing, industrial, commercial, sector. But if it does, we'll have to figure it out, but there's gonna be some choices we're gonna have to make.
Thank you, Mayor. Corey, can you go back to the slide that shows the comparison of the cities?
Yeah.
And I'm curious, looking at these, there's some fast-growing cities on there. Mayor, do you have a sense of how some of those other cities are looking at that? We've seen in the news, for instance, that Ankeny is annexing 1,300 acres north. They're, I'm guessing, going to continue on their path of pioneer infrastructure and things to support development. Are other cities on this list responding in the same way of seeing the threat down the road, or can you describe how maybe are they dealing with it differently?
Do they see a threat coming down the road? Absolutely. But I can't speak to how they are going to go ahead and respond to it. Maybe Steve can, or maybe Corey can, because you're actually talking to other finance directors and you're talking to our city managers. I know that it's going to be a topic of discussion at mayor meetings we have coming up. But if it doesn't it becomes relative to, let's just say if there was a 3% hard cap on our entire budget, that means that every one of those cities is going to have exactly the same cap, not in terms of the number, but how much they can grow, going forward. Go ahead, Corey.
I would say, they're doing similar things. They're looking at franchise fees if they don't have them. Ankeny doesn't have a sales tax. I know they've considered it once. I think they'll probably consider it again. And then I think really the realistic options are looking at cutting services. And so are you reducing library hours? Are you reducing the number of public safety? That's one of the things that the legislature has said, don't talk about reducing public safety, but such a huge portion of our budget goes to public safety. And so we're kind of limited in terms of our options. I think the last time that we met with legislators, we said, provide us other revenue sources. We're statutorily limited to certain revenue sources, hotel motel tax, sales tax, those type of things. Give us some options there. Let us vote on them as a community. And I think that's what other people are trying to do too. I just don't know that the environment is as such that they want to increase taxes in any way, shape, or form. And so that's kind of the feedback we're getting. But I know that, cities across the cities in this list, and we talk to the finance directors, I do all the time, and it's in place and you do what you can, but it really does come down to kind of cutting services and finding additional revenue sources where you can if you haven't already tapped them. But
We're being impacted now with current legislation that changed on us on that general levy, which already imposes a calculated cap on what we could do based on a formula.
Yeah.
And that really hurt us right off the bat. That's operating expenses, not the debt service expense. And everybody's afraid it's going to get worse. And then you make choices, do people there's a lot of people who want to keep the library open before they'd like me to, close the swimming pool or vice versa. The council will get pressure from all those different areas. So, and everybody thinks theirs is the most important project, right? They just do.
And Dylan, to your point too, is the franchise fees has come up, and there has been some discussion now at the State House. I don't know where it stands, but essentially saying you can't add franchise fees anymore. If you have it in place, I guess you can keep it, but you can't add it. We're trying to figure out, and to Corey's point, we've asked for what are some other revenue sources? Could we increase the hotel motel tax that we could use that, because that's when we travel, you guys travel, it's a pretty large chunk, at the bottom. But what the feedback that at least I've gotten is we don't want to hear about any more taxes. So it becomes a revenue. So again, it's just, we're going to have to figure out where our community is going to be supportive of shifting some, funds around. And I mentioned this at the mayor's, roundtable that we had, or forum we had a few weeks ago too, is that we're going to have to really wrestle with some really hard decisions. But with that said, we'll try and work on it, but it may mean that we have to deprioritize some things.
It's going to be hard to do it all.
It is. And the other thing is that we appreciate all of you, sincerely appreciate coming out and talking and having this conversation, because we need to have it as a community. But it's really hard to get other people, to give us feedback. We need feedback, also. And what's interesting is that, I don't know, speaking of myself, I never got an email from anybody saying our property taxes are too high. I don't think council gets that typically. But then when you go to the State House, that's what you get hit in the face with, is that, oh, never go door knocking in your community. It's always, your taxes are too high. Property. So it's like, goodness gracious. So anyway, we beat that horse to death. I'm sorry, I don't mean to repeat, but I just wanted you to be aware of, this are the kind of things that we're trying to balance and work with. And I agree. I think that we all would like to see additional amenities brought to the community and pursue after that, the guiding vision for downtown and other things to get more housing, done either downtown or out in the perimeter and pioneer infrastructure. So we got to roll our shirt sleeves up and try and figure it out.
Just one last thing that, and it's been brought up a couple times, but I didn't think it made it up to the board yet on the more category, is the downtown visioning. I mean, we just went through an extensive process that Sam and Dylan and others of us have been a part of in the room. And I really hope City Council will take a hard look at, because if we're just gonna, I think this is if for sure the second, if not the third one of those things that have been on, and we come up with big ideas and we end up buying 3 flower pots, and say that was all we could afford to do. And, I agree with what you're saying, Mayor, and all of us need to, if we need to be advocates for the city at the State House, you're right. We all need to be a part of that, but we have to figure it out. Other people have figured it out. And so if we're going to be a growing, thriving community, we have to collectively figure it out. I think everybody in this room or everybody that I talk to says we're tired of hearing what Ames can't do. It's time for us to figure out what Ames can do and get some of the other amenities, because that's what's holding us back. Is we hear often what Ames can't do. It's time we start figuring out how Ames can do many of these things.
Just to piggyback onto that, it struck me that the more list doesn't necessarily need to be all on the city's burden either. For instance, the industrial development and installation of new infrastructure. The Ames Alliance can help with funding for EDA through EDA grants and things like that. I was just talking with Sam. I had a meeting earlier today with an entity here in Ames that has up to $25,000 to support programs this year for implementing the downtown guiding vision. And so there's things that can be additive to this list in addition to just asking the city to pay for it through taxes. I know the conference center, that's the event center high on the list here. There's a significant effort in finding private funding to help support that as well. And so our discussion here is about the taxes for the city of Ames, but the folks sitting in this room are helping for many of those things identify funding to offset the cost of that.
Normally I want to make sure our guests have a chance to offer, but I want to just give maybe Corey a chance to speak to an entirely different subject, and that is what we're doing on asset. So at a time when people who are receiving SNAP benefits are under a lot of pressure with the federal shutdown, could you just speak to what we're doing? Maybe just give a sentence or two overview of what the asset process from PA, either one, just to give what we're doing for asset and maybe speak to some of the pressures on that point.
So asset is our human services funding side of things. So we take local option sales tax, about $2 million from city funding, and allocate it to social service providers. And so that may fund things like daycare services, food pantries, homeless sheltering, that sort of thing, the kind of the human services field. So we're seeing a lot of cuts at the federal level on those types of items too, which brings additional pressure to the city council for more funding. And we know, like Steve said, we're seeing a lot of restrictions put into place. So I think this year we're going to see even more difficult decisions that the council will have to make on that front. Yeah.
Okay.
You want to
anything-
just review how we get like, this year we got $12 million from local option sales tax, is that right?
Yeah.
Why don't you explain what statutorily we have to do with it and then how it's used otherwise?
Yeah, Nancy's going to correct me on the percentages, but I think 60% of the sales tax goes to support that property tax reduction that you saw on our previous slide.
And that was part of the vote of the people
Yeah.
that if we have 1 cent sales tax, 60% will always go to reduce property taxes.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and again, Mayor mentioned we get about $12 million. That's been probably pretty close to our average the last couple of years. The remaining 40% goes to, let's just see, community betterment. So assets, some park and rec projects, if I have that right. I think that primarily makes up.
Yeah, asset coda for operations,
Yeah.
but the significant.
About half of the
portion
40% goes.
Yeah.
inside.
So it just runs it. Yep. So we estimated about 12.5 million, about 2.7 million would go to art and other human service programs like asset. And then we have about another $2.2 million and largely it appears to be park and rec programs and other like the facade program for communities or for businesses downtown and in the campus town area. And that kind of takes, yep, right.
Shared use paths, that's another one that's funded through
Sure.
that. Shared use paths is another one that's funded through a CIP. It usually is funded through local option sales tax. Shared use
Pass.
Yeah.
So those are items that we would probably include in a bond issuance if we didn't have that source of funding. And so again, that would just drive up our debt service. So we're trying to minimize some of those things at that point. Yeah.
So the
we're
reason
not
I
doing
bring
that.
that up is that Tim asked the question, Paul said, we're spending about a little over $2 million for
Mhm.
human services. They're getting pressure and needing more revenue, but our discretionary amount of money we have from asset is 40%, 60% has to go to property tax, reduction. So,
Relatively
to
new.
Chuck's point, let's figure out what can we do. But it's basically going to be, how are you looking at how these different funds are being invested and is there shifting that has to be done if we get some kind of a major cap. Now, if that doesn't happen at the legislature, then that could be a different story, this time next year.
All right, anybody else have any questions? I appreciate you all coming out tonight. Again, if you weren't here today, you could feel free to email Mayor and Council and offer your suggestions for the upcoming budget or CIP. Plenty of time. Key dates are going to be January 20th. We're going to unveil our CIP. Haven't even started yet. We're going to unveil it in January 20th. And then those budget hearings are open to the public, can be viewed on cable also. And then remember, that's January 30th, correct? Am I correct?
Yep.
February 3, 4, 5. And the final decisions are made by the council to take the public hearing. Those final decisions are made on February 10th. So there's a lot of time for input. We've got to gather a lot of data ourselves from what the department's requesting, what people are requesting, and see how we can level that out to minimize the impact on rates and property taxes on our citizens. That's what we're going to try to do. All right. I want to thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Steve.
Enjoy the evening. That's all.